Oh, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. They used to say, have we done this recently? This is circa 1935. Hello, all you out there in radio land, something like that. I saw something very interesting on the way over tonight. And if you don't mind, I'd like this to be embodied for us if we can. That's the point of it. The moon is out there, and it's a crescent moon. And it's very near the horizon, which probably means it's a new moon. I don't know. I have to think about that. And it's quite big. It may be that real illusion, the scientists call it a real illusion. I think that's fascinating, and it just brings a big crack in the cosmic egg in terms of what they call epistemology, theory of knowledge. But it's big. And I was waiting for Abhedananda to arrive. We're just having a little prelude here, brother, because it occurred to me tonight. I try to see it as three-dimensional. You can with binoculars. During an eclipse, it's a big bowling ball hanging, not supported by anything visible support. So my point is this. If you got closer to the moon in a spaceship, it would get bigger. And I'm going to ask Atmavid, you want to take a quick hack at this? If you get half as close, will it be twice as big in diameter and appearance? Or maybe many times, I don't know. Wouldn't be long before you notice a bigger moon.
Yeah, it might be, I don't know, is it 4 times as big?
It's about 2,000 miles in diameter. It's a quarter the size of, might be 4 times as big. But the point is, imagine this entity, which is really a relative. It came from the earth, something smashing. It's very large. So imagine you're going in a spaceship toward the moon, which has been done, incidentally. The little children on the Navajo reservation, when John Dobson told them that, they couldn't believe it. Somebody's been there, they said. This is supposed to be an analogy to the spiritual journey. So let's assume you go half as far, it's 4 times as big. That thing is gigantic. So, of course, as you get to it, it fills the screen just the way the Earth does. But you wouldn't have to take a long time, I'm saying, to be close enough to the moon to see it twice as big as it is now. And if you think of it as twice as big, then you realize you got a neighbor. There's somebody out there. So it's like God in the shrine. If I'm right, do you think it's a new moon? It's that, there's this thinking. Let's assume it is. A couple of days ago, you couldn't see it at all. Speaking about God in the shrine, sitting down in the back somewhere, trying to meditate. And now there's a little sliver. Swami used to say, Swami Sohanana, a hint. And if we stay the course, and we try, we want to see you. George Harrison got hit over the head, like my story about the talking horse and all the mule. Well, I got 2 before, but it was a book. Somebody handed him a book in India. They sent John Lennon up in the helicopter with the Maharishi, whoever, because they thought he'd enjoy it more, get more out of it. Somebody gave George Harrison, you know the story? A copy of Raja Yoga, the royal path, the handle for all the other yogas, action and love and knowledge. And somewhere in that book, maybe even on the dust jacket, if there was one, Vivekananda is saying the path of meditation. You can see God. He goes home and writes this hymn, one of the great hymns of the 20th century. Oh, Lord, I really want to see you. I really want to be with you. It won't take long, my Lord. My sweet Lord. Oh, my Lord. Gurudev. What you got for us tonight, buddy?
Well, since we just kind of went through the week of the Parliament of Religions, I thought we could read the chapter entitled Universal Outlook of the Vedantic Religion.
Now, is that a different volume of Abhedananda? We're studying
No, it's the same one you had last week, but there was no mark, so I wasn't quite sure where
So
you
now
were.
the question is, has he just got back to Dhaka and is this welcoming him back in Dhaka?
Well, this is Vivekananda. This is Abhedananda.
Yeah, Abhedananda, that's
Yeah,
what we read
yeah,
last week.
yeah.
So I'm just saying, is this the
I
beginning?
don't know. Is this? Did you read this last week?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Does it say something about he's just gotten off the boat, he's having a meeting in Dhaka? It would say it that.
An
isn't it?
address of welcome.
Yes,
presented.
that's right.
So is this the one you
Yeah.
read?
So
Oh,
we read
okay.
into it about a page.
Oh,
and a
just a
half.
page and a half. Okay, well then we can continue.
Yeah, let's continue. And you mean you and I just now are chatting? Okay, Christian missionaries.
That's only 4
Deussen, we
pages.
read Deussen. Yeah. Yeah. Could we start right here, brother, on 254, paragraph 1. We've all had a beautiful day, and maybe we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Good evening, all you out there in radio.
All right. My friends, here allow me to mention when I went to America and how I went. Our president has already told you that our illustrious brother Swami Vivekananda, whose name is honored and revered all over the world as the great patriot saint of modern India, went to represent philosophy and religion and culture of ancient India at the Great Parliament of Religions, which was held at Chicago in 1893. He gave his message before that vast congregation, which consisted of men of talents from parts of the world, where gathered the great philosophers from all countries, including China and Japan and other parts of Asia and Europe, and where there were bishops and archbishops, monks and giants in literary lines. Before that vast assembly, Swami Vivekananda, who never lectured before in public, stood up unprepared at the call of the president of the Parliament of Religions, and with his benign manners and kindly expression, he addressed that vast assembly with the sweet words, "Sisters and brothers of America." That was a new way of addressing the public in America. Other speakers who went before him had not addressed the audience with those expressions, and those 2 loving words touched the hearts of the whole congregation. They cheered, and that cheer would not stop, and Swami Vivekananda did not know what had happened. His mind was confused, and he thought he had made the greatest mistake of the day, because other speakers addressed, and the audience had not behaved in that way. Sometimes he stood there like a statue, and from his lips dropped words of wisdom, while he was nearly unconscious of himself. And that was his first address. He could not remember what he said, and afterwards, when the reporters published the reports of his speech in the daily papers, the anxiety of his mind was abated. Then he knew that he had not committed any mistake, but they liked the expression, and that he was the hero of the day.
Wow. That's kind of you passing the buck?
Yeah. Or the book.
Look, that's it, right? Now, where are you, actually? Hero of the day. Hero of the day. This is pretty beefy. Now, because we're sticklers around here, Atmavision and I, this is probably the mark of a little mind in my case. He did talk once before. They call it off-Broadway. They talk it like it won't play in Peoria, a tiny little town in Illinois. But they do, I think even New Haven is a place where they have plays sometimes before they go on to Broadway. He had a chance. Swami Chagananda, you go to Boston and see that wonderful Swami out there, he'll take you around. And as I recall, it was in a little Unitarian church. The Unitarians were close enough to their birth, the day that they were born, with the mystics like William Ellery Channing and so all these people, till they recognized Vivekananda. Every denomination its birth, we're saying, has a shower of spirituality around it when it started mysticism, meaning the experience of God inside the heart, in the heart of the person, inside the person. So he spoke just for a few people. kind of warming it up, getting the carburetor started on a cold morning. After giving his message before that assembly, he was regarded as a gigantic magnet of the whole congregation, and people sat at his feet and listened to the words of wisdom which dropped from his lips with reverence, admiration, and astonishment. Can I get away with it? Okay. We have a great interfaith movement here in Southern California. From our point of view, okay, so we're a little bit provincial. I hope not parochial, slight difference in intonation here. We believe it's all because of Vivekananda. Interfaith. And that speech. And that's all because of Sri Ramakrishna. I see Sri Ramakrishna as a surfer. I hope you don't mind. Right here in Southern California, a surfboard, catching the crest of the wave, blazing new trails of wonder and love and honor. And the Parliament of Religion, when he said, sisters and brothers of America, he said, I ain't going to hate no more. It's all about love from here on in. He said, across the banners of the religions of the world will be written, help and not fight. Peace and not war. Huh? So, one of our grand institutions, Ghana's been our representative from the 43rd District for years and decades, the Interreligious Council of Southern California, what they used to call themselves. It was one of the, and it was really formed, as I think such a group should be, not as an organization or a business-like thing, but of the elders from this group and that group. And LA is, the second largest city now, past Chicago some decades ago, when Chicago was 3 million or something, and now we're 4. So we had a lot of wonderful preachers in this town, Jewish, Catholic, and all the little Protestant denominations you could think of. And they all got together in fellowship and love, and I know that for a fact. We saw them, they were here. Father, later to be Monsignor Vatican, and Rabbi Wolf were the ones that founded it. So Rabbi Wolf, it comes his time to retire from the Wilshire Reformed Temple. If I was to be in LA for any reason, I don't know any reason to be here, I would go humbly, I might have mentioned this, with my hat in my hand to the Victory Baptist Church. Face of thy father's holy faith, where Dr. King spoke. And I heard Ralph David Abernathy there. And I would go humbly to, really quietly, to the Wilshire Memorial, the Wilshire Reformed Temple. Say, may I join? So Rabbi Wolf is retiring, and all of a sudden, big dinner for him, all that. The receiving line, we're going out, he and Mrs. Wolf, one very tall. Every big temple, every big church has 3 ministers. One of them's the education minister. That was Rabbi Wolf. And I said, Rabbi, I know from the Protestant tradition how important the wife of the minister is to the success of his ministry. Because usually the head of the Sunday school, well, my goodness, just won't quit. It's a double ministry. And she kind of bounced up and down on her toes. She said, yes, she said, behind every successful man is an astonished mother-in-law. So they're listening to this man from India, who knows where, reverence, hey, admiration, and I love it, and astonishment. Afterwards, Swami Vivekananda was invited in different parts of the country to deliver his message. As Buddha had a message for the East, he said, I have a message for the West. Now, everybody in this room, and everybody out there in Radio Land, yes, I knew you over there in India, and anybody else that's listening, could I be forgiven for thinking this is Sri Ramakrishna's agenda? As Jesus said to his disciples who thought he was coming back again while they were living in Israel, the field is the world. I want you to go shed your light with the Gentiles. I want you to bring your light to the Gentiles. So until every man, woman, and child in America has the chance not to hear the word Vedanta, not to hear about us, our little church, our particular saints and illumined souls. No, no. Vivekananda said, I want more than that. I want the universality of real experiential religion in a person's heart to reach every man, woman, and child in the world. Ooh. So I'm just saying that if he said he had a message for the West, all you folks that have come here, where have you been all our lives? Bringing Eastern spirituality, mysticism, crashing up on the rocks of the intellectual left hemisphere scientific West, analytical West. That could be your job too. Is it not your job? In Australia, our Swami there says, look, if you think you came to Australia, he's spoken to the Indian folks, descended folks, to make money, to be comfortable, better life, freedom, go home. Swami, what are you saying? Our job is to reach the benighted. I know I'm one of them. The Yankees, whom you cannot tell who is one. There is no American face. You go to Europe, you see an Italian, no, it's Italian. Norway, probably from Norway. But you don't know what an American looks like. It's the composite of the whole world. The American face is a mosaic. And Swamiji came here to this parliament at this time to reach us, to bring the light to the Gentiles. So he invited after that in different parts of the country to deliver his message. For nearly 3 years he remained there and delivered the message of Vedanta, which is union with God and union with each other in our hearts, by virtue of that, and the wisdom of India before the hungry population of the United States. After spending nearly 3 years of untiring labor, he was invited to go to England to spread the universal gospel of truth. Good luck in that land. Uh-oh. You're not talking about people now, you're talking about weather. You got that one? Of coldness, dampness, and fog. You're talking about the weather. Therefore, he went there, Francis, in England, think of it, in 1895, and further. I don't know what that means, 1895, and further, into, I think he means, 1896, and stayed there for a while. While staying in England, he sent his request to me, Abhedananda. Imagine, his brother, disciple, and called me to come over and take up the work which he had started.
You want me to take up the work that you started?
Take up the work, man. Absolutely.
All right.
Oof. I don't want to take so much of this, It's marvelous. All right.
Okay, I've responded to his affectionate call and went alone, and crossing the different oceans, landed in London in 1896. Giving the charge of his work to me, Swami Vivekananda returned to India and asked me to stay in England and to continue the work which he had started. Therefore, I stayed in London for a year and a half and lectured 3 or 4 times every week. My first lecture before the public was on the philosophy of Panchadasi in London in a foreign tongue before an English audience, and I continued to do the work as I was directed by my predecessor, Swami Vivekananda. Then, at his request, I went to New York and started to continue the work which he had also started there. He left only a handful of students in New York who were eager to continue the study of the Vedanta philosophy of India. They also invited me to go to New York. I started my work in America with this handful of students. I continued to work with the name of my beloved master, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and established there a big society known as the Vedanta Society of New York. It was incorporated and well organized. After some years, Swami Vivekananda returned again to America and lived with me for 2 months in New York. He saw the work that I was doing and was highly pleased with the extent of my well-organized work.
Oh, now you know that's kind of like a little bit this visit. These guys, I tell you, we're only basing this on the experience that we may have had with the what I like to call third generation and fourth generation Swami. You've got Sri Ramakrishna, superluminary, that's the way it starts. Then you've got disciples, 16 of them, which is what of who we're reading. And then their students, who are the Swamis that we have met in America. People now living. And they have thronged into this very room that Swami Vivekananda, you know, the host that in South Pasadena in 1900, the sister that lived there with her 2 sisters and family, she was here in 1929, so those third generations permeated this space. And now some fourth generation Swamis are there. And I have to tell you, from some of these more recent ones, third and fourth generation, they're kind of selfless. You kind of miss the ego. It's dropped out, like matter in the equation 1905 equals MC squared. They can sound a little bit that way sometimes. It's all about God. And so when you sit in their presence, pretty soon you begin to feel something like that. Yeah, they're looking at you, they're talking to you, but it's not Sam Jones. It's not the guy that had a birth name, you know, like Susan Smith. And if they say these things, pretty soon you figure out it's really about God. They're pretty well organized work, but it's all, all about God. So there is not one. I have not met one. And for a very simple reason, there is not one Swami still in the Ramakrishna order about whom you can say it's all about me. So much so. These are some of the secret things, you know, the unspoken things in their heart, that if you get to know them, they will say pretty soon, speaking of being the guru, the teacher, you know, all these people have a manager. In India, just like a good singer in this country, you go back to your teacher, even after you're retired, and take a lesson every week. Hey, they got baseball, they got a manager of the team in India. Every ashram, to me, is where a holy man lives. And then all the devotees, you know? So they'll say, speaking of the guru, that they themselves have now become the guru of Sri Ramakrishna. Okay, so well done, huh, Swamiji? Okay, all right.
It was through our efforts that the Vedanta Society published many of Swamiji's writings and also other works which contained our lectures. We made the Vedanta Society of New York known all over the world. We published the Gospel of Ramakrishna, and you will be surprised to hear that the book was afterwards translated into Spanish and Scandinavian languages, and also into other languages of Europe. Now the people all over the world are eager to know the truth, which was given out by our great master, Bhagavan Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Sri Ramakrishna gave his new ideal before the world, and his ideal is the ideal of eternal, and universal religion, which I called Sanatana Dharma. Swami Vivekananda was the first exponent of the all-embracing ideal in the Western world, and I followed his footsteps and kept up the work, and the seed that was planted by Swami Vivekananda was fostered by our continuous effort and works.
No, man, I've lost 256.
Well, there were only a few pages. Do you want these, or do you want the book?
But sometime when you want me to.
I only ran off 4 other pages because I thought we'd be starting at the beginning.
I got you.
Yeah, so we take
So
that.
yeah, I'll pick it up later with you.
It's your turn.
But I need a page, don't I? Have a book or something. Oh, did you just hand it to me? There you I see. I thought he meant there were only a few ever made in the history of the world. So are we at Now I Have Given?
Yes.
Now I've given you a short outline of all the works which were started in the West during 25 years. I traveled London and Paris and New York and crossed the Atlantic 17 times. Hey, on a boat. Columbus took over a month to do that one way, and went to different parts of Europe and delivered the message of Vedanta to different people. Get that? Not the Vedanta, not the Vedanta Society, not my view of real estate and opinion of affairs. Then I crossed the continent to the United States. Now, I'm not quite sure what he means. It surely means of the United States. Are you fixing that?
I didn't bring a pen.
Okay, we'll work on that later. Of the United States, which is almost 3,200 miles wide. Okay, we think 3,000, but why not from one string, one way or another, from Maine to Southern California, and crossing back and forth many times. Took 4 days by train. I lectured in the universities of New York, Chicago, Cornwall. I have no idea what Cornwall is about. California and Toronto. I traveled from Alaska to Mexico and through Canada. Can you imagine? This guy, my friends, is like a Brownian tagged atom. He glows in the dark. Where he moves, you can see a trail of light in the very words that he speaks. I met men like William James, oh, this is making me shiver, of Harvard, who was the greatest psychologist, given credit to be the father of American psychology. Professor Landman, who translated the Art of Veda, one of the 4 Vedas, into English. Professor Jackson of Columbia University, Professor Hiram Carson of Cornell, that's what he meant, Cornell University, not Cornwall, and other great intellectual giants. It's really nice of him to call them so. He ought to know. He was one. Yeah, William James had some sparks, and the others, no doubt, were wonderful, great, great professors. But to call them great intellectual giants when he himself had known God, total union with God, is pretty magnificent of him, pretty generous. Swamiji was the same way. All of them were my friends. I made them honorary members of our society in New York, and they were glad to become connected with our work. We made quite a number of students who were known as the brahmacharians. Well, it's awkward language, but, he made a number of his students brahmacharians. These are going to be like monklets. We gave such names to them as Shivadas, Ramdas, Haridas, Gurudas, this is Joe Smith we're talking about, Kalidas, and so on. One of our students, Gurudas, oh boy, here we go now. Got your seatbelt fastened? Parenthesis, who took the name Swami Abhedananda. Want to see a grown man cry? In Kentucky, grown men cry. Hey, Abhedananda, he's giving it away. He's a Westerner. All of these people are Jack Smith. They're Westerners. Simon Garfunkel. Abhedananda, Gurudas Maharaj, happens to be Dutch. The Dutch came early to America and founded New Amsterdam in New York City. Peter Minuit gave some jewels and little trinkets to the Indians that lived there, $24 worth. Of course, $24 then, worth a little bit more now for Manhattan Island. But this man, Dutch, he joined our headquarters in India, in Bellermont, and lived in India, oh boy. we made also brahmacharinis, who were devout students of Vedanta and were initiated by me. And their names were, imagine, they're reborn in spirit. Second birth. This is Jane Smith. This is Susan Doe. And now they're called Bhavani, Shankari, Narayani, Satyapriya, and so on. Our Krishna Priya just went on to glory. Hi, Krishna Priya. She's in joy. They were proud to be called by such Indian names. They also claimed themselves as Hindus. Well, that's a bit far for some of it. For some of us, Hindu is a sociological reference. It's just sociological. Therefore, I am not now, never can be, whatever. A Hindu. Remember, the Alexander the Great gets to the river, called in Greek Indus. And he asks the Persians, who lisp a little bit and can't pronounce the word shibboleth, I love to point out, is a Hebrew password. The Canaanites could not pronounce S. So shibboleth is, if you can say shibboleth, you can get across the border. You know what the French say? I love it. Qui vive? Who? We say, who goes there? Qui vive? Who lives? Who lives? So anyway, they're proud to be. They also claim themselves as Hindus. So Alexander, who lives over there? And the Persians, the Sindh River, and so on. Oh, the Hinds, meaning the people on the other side of the Indus. If you want to ask me who are the Indian people, they are the land of India, Bharat, the land of light. That's who the Indian people are. I'd be proud to be a little guy in their parade and ranks. But my friends, when they call themselves Hindus, you must not think that their religion was Chutmarga, have I come close? And that their religion was confined to the kitchen. But they had a different idea of Hinduism. And that Hinduism, or as we like to say, Vedanta, the perennial philosophy, the eternal, yes, and that Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion of mysticism, which is raised above all distinctions.
But here in India, what most of the people call Hinduism is not a true type of religion, but it is just like the worship of Lokachara, or the common popular custom. And that Lokachara, or popular custom, has covered the truth of Sanatana Dharma, which is taught in the Vedas and the Upanishads. Sanatana Dharma teaches that we are all the immortal Atman, and God dwells in us. We are all united with the infinite ocean of knowledge and existence and bliss, and we are like the waves in that infinite ocean of the Brahman, and all the individual souls are nothing but the representatives of the Divine Spirit. This Atman is one and the same, whether we belong to Hinduism, or Vaishnavism, or Shaivism, or Buddhism, or Mohammedanism, or Christianity, or any other faith or religion.
Let's just honor our Muslim friends by using the 20th century word, I think it's only courteous and fair, of Islam and Muslim. Okay, that's
Okay.
also a word. Okay, gotcha.
Our material body is the sacred temple wherein dwells the eternal being, whom we should worship in spirit and by spirit. So we have no right to hate anybody or to condemn anyone. But we have an eternal right to worship everyone and to recognize everyone as Narayana in the human form.
Our religion also teaches us beings as brothers and friends. Do you know why do we fold our hands before strangers when we give them our namaskara? That means that we recognize the divinity in all. Namaskara. The divinity within me salutes the divinity within me. That means that we recognize the divinity in all. We do not shake hands as Europeans do because that's kind of a barbarous custom and presence to us. You know what it means, don't you? I just figured that out. It means you're not reaching for your sword. You know what kneeling before the king means? I'm vulnerable. You know what the salute means? I love this because this came down, like links, living links between soldiers for all these years. Hey, doesn't this give you a little tingle? It means you're lifting your visor to let the person who knows, there's a person looking at you who knows inside the tin can. The handshake is really the right hand had fellowship in America or the West. He doesn't feel that's the case. Good for him. He said, but I think we're going to find this out in a minute. I love this. I'm kind of predicting him, I believe, a little bit. He says, do you know why it is a barbarous custom? In ancient times, when the people were fighting one against the other, if anyone met a stranger, he considered him to be his enemy. That's the safe way to proceed. Better safe than sorry. They used to have swords hanging on the left side. Ah, do you mind? I'm feeling a tingle, Swami. Because it just came to me tonight. And when they met a stranger, they were ready to draw the sword with the right hand. And when they realized he was not an enemy, instead of drawing the sword with the right hand, they gave the right hand to the stranger. Ho, ho, ho. And that meant an expression of friendship. Well, friends, that's good enough for me. I offer you, my brother, the right hand of fellowship. Symbol of my heart. No, that's not enough for me, buddy. We're on a ride today. We had a big day already, folks. Come on now, give me some more.
That is the reason why I said it was a barbarous custom. Otherwise, it is not my intention to criticize the European custom.
Thank you.
Because customs of all nations and all countries differ from one another, and so those should not be criticized. In India, we generally know that instead of fighting each other, we should love each other and we should make friendship with each other, and that love and friendship are to be manifested by recognizing one and the same divinity in all. Therefore,
excuse me, Swami, but we've reached the top of a hilltop here. We had a lot of mountains in California, and until recently they were all covered in trees, But as you go up the mountain, you get to these viewpoint sites. You drive off the road. And one of the great thrills, really, enjoyments of a mountain trip, you go off to one of these viewpoint sites and you can look for 100 miles and more, east even, across the Great Plains, across the desert first, the Great Plains. So I just think this is like what's happened tonight. Okay, I took a deep breath. Recognizing the one and same divinity in all.
Therefore, we have a better method of meeting our friends and strangers by saluting namaskara or pranama, as well as by recognizing the divinity in all. In this way, you will find that our Sanatana Dharma teaches that God is all, God is in all, and God is all-pervading. And even in a pariah, one and the same divine spirit dwells all the time. We must recognize that divine spirit in a Brahman, in a cow, in a dog, and in a pariah. And so Sri Krishna has said in the Bhagavad Gita that you must recognize the same divinity in a highly cultured Brahman, in a cow, in an elephant, and in a dog, and in a pariah, whom you sometimes regarded as a scavenger. You should remember that the so-called scavenger is as great as you are, if not greater. What you cannot do yourself, your scavenger does for you. Therefore, he is is also greater than you. So regard him as the living God, and when you will be able to uplift the downtrodden masses of your society, and then you will be able to, because they have the power to regenerate India and to elevate and animate India with their spirit and ideas. Sometime it is found that the higher classes are worse than the lower classes, because the lower classes have conserved their energies for centuries, and if they will let loose that energy, they will move the world.
Yeah, Swami, I need that back for a moment. This has been quite a day. We put out a fire twice. And I'm not happy about this fire, Swami, because it was on the other side of the freeway. We live on a freeway. And some of us have fallen in love with the plants around here. I like to say that in a big garden, the garden we treat plants as animals. And animals as people. You know, Mr. Dog or person, cat, deer person, D-E-E-R, we like deer. And we treat humans as potentially divine. And humans are the real product, you could say, of the garden, but the flowers are for the Lord that worship. So anyway. So we have an acoustic wall that's been put up here very kindly by the freeway, and over the years this beautiful, I'm not sure we know exactly what the name is, yellow flower will come down through tendrils of green that like a waterfall that encompasses this wall and other parts of the fence. And I'm sorry, my friends, but can you understand? My plant friend, our plant friend, suffered severe damage this morning. And it takes it so long to drape like a waterfall. It was undamaged before by a fire. And now it's maybe 1/3 or something. And today we were coming back driving on and said, I see smoke. I wouldn't believe me, but I saw it. It was the embers of that earlier fire starting again. So they came back and put it out with a fire extinguisher. Fire. I'm not happy. There's various forms of insanity, you know, that these people get into in spiritual life. They thought that Swami Krishna was mad all the time because he'd dance and he'd sing, he'd stagger. I'm not happy, Swami. After taking those plans. It takes them so long to come. So the homeless is what we're talking about here, and I want to give you something. I really, really do. You heard what he said. He said they can move the world if they have that energy. Let loose that energy. So India is so old, it has these great ovals. It's a cyclical philosophy anyway. In which at one point the men and women of God were given the prior place, you know, in the towns, the little villages and so on. And then over long years of time they became egocentric and self-centered, and so the military men took over, and the kings, some of them became fully illumined. Swamiji points out that all of the so-called avatars, the superluminaries, they're all kings. Buddha, Jesus, if you will, is a king. Descended from the house of David, spiritually. And as a matter of fact, no, I can't do that, but other members of Jesus' family had royal names like Joshua. So they had a great romp, and they created nation states like old John, funny old bad John. You know. And England said, I'm tired of spending money for the Pope. I'm tired of giving money to the Pope. Tell you what I'm going to do, boys. You said I have to ask you anymore before I go back to France to try to reclaim my lands there, the barons at Magna Carta. Hey, you're taxing us, John, too many times. Before you go in there, you've got to ask us at the beginning of Parliament. Said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a nation state here called England. So they had a big romp. They got egocentric. And the next big oval has been the business group. Every country, you know, has these groups. The intellectuals, the lawyers, the professors, the ministers, all these people, so on. And then you get the people who work for the government, including the post office, civil service, that's another one. And now we've been in the business culture for quite a while. It's been a great romp. Even England left railroads, huh? a stone on its railroads. In the English language, these are not small things, my friends. And the idea of liberty under law. And now I'll leave it to you. He talks about the upper classes here. That sometimes it's found that the higher classes are worse than the lower classes. And all he says about that is because the lower classes have conserved their energies for centuries, and if they will let loose that energy, and India says they will let loose that energy, they will move the world, and they'll call it translates so beautifully into American English, they'll call it the society of the sovereignty of the people. My dad and his dad, who was a farmer, my mother's closest friend called him a spiritual aristocrat. He was something, he was a loving, dignified man. Grandfather Lawrence Sheffield Blue. And he was walking with Dad, his younger son, and sharing with this little boy a lot of stuff. And Dad was sticking up his nose, picking up his nose a bit, at what they call a swill picker. I'll let you fill in the blank. Swill picker. And Grandfather looked at him and said, son, he said, I would steal. Wouldn't talk to me. I would steal to feed my family. But I'd pick swill first. Now we have all these homeless people. Talk about an underclass, that's what pariah means. That they can't feed themselves, they can't take care of themselves, they fall into a lassitude so deep that they can't extricate themselves. They're sleeping on the ground mainly so they won't have to pay rent, so they can eat or hopefully eat. God knows what's going to happen to them. The swill pickers, they're the ones that set that fire this morning to inanition. You talk about, what do they call it, igniting something? To inanition, just through Thomas. They set that fire, and they've done enough damage here to this place. Inadvertently, whatever, this, that, and the other. And it's from the ranks, my friends, are you a true American or not? I'm saying, looking at the new day, the day of the society, of the sovereignty of the people, from the ranks of the so-called poor. Those who, as we now are finding out more and more systemically since 1619, not counting the American Indians, that was battle, that was fair game at those days. 1619 had been denied education, even legally the right to learn to read and write, to be married, to have a future, to plan for the life of your sons and daughters. From the ranks of such as these, already the wisdom level of this country, and I include the Latinos, and I include every woman and man, every jack in the group that Swamiji came all the way 10,000 miles as a relatively young man from India to say, sisters and brothers of America, as the ones that are to bring in the new day, the sovereignty of the people, and make Lincoln's dream. He was part of the evolution of a day in which this country would be indeed the country of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Read another paragraph, it's getting late.
Send us over the line, buddy. Carry the football over the line. Carry us into the new day. New day, the golden era with Sir Ramakrishna's blessings of the shower of mysticism upon each one of us. All right, go for it.
Do you know how Buddhism was spread all over India? It is found in the history that Buddhism was spread by starting with the lower classes. Do you know how the religion of Chaitanya was spread? It was also spread by starting among the coolies, the mallis, and the jellas, and they overran the highest classes afterwards. Do you know how Christianity was spread? We know that Christ had only a handful of fishermen as his disciples, who were downtrodden and hated by others. And when Christianity was spread in Rome, the higher classes never put their attention and care to these things. The slaves accepted the religion of Christianity
And the soldiers too, soldiers and slaves.
because they found more freedom in Christianity, and afterwards conquered the emperors and made them disciples, and that means Christianity conquered the whole nation of the Western world. The same thing happened in our country, in India. So we must remember that the lower classes are the living gods, nay, the living embodiment of the Lord Narayana. So when you have treated them with ignominy, the Lord has punished us, and we are now downtrodden today. Therefore, for propitiating the deity and expiating our sinful acts as well as the sinful acts of our forefathers, we should now regard the Divine Spirit in all and recognize them as the sacred temples of the Almighty.
Sacred temples of the Almighty. I heard that. Hey, we'll try that tomorrow? Let's try that. You know, Vivekananda says if you give 50 cents to somebody, it won't be enough. Don't go strapping your suspenders. Ask him his name.
They are temples of the Almighty Being, and this is the universal and all-embracing religion of Vedanta. Today I am going to preach before you the religion which was started by the rishis of ancient times, who expressed their conviction and also their realization of the eternal truth in the language which is known as the Deva Bhasha, that is, the language of the gods. In the Rig Veda we find a beautiful expression, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahadu Vadanti, that which exists is one. Men call it by various names. That which exists is one, but it varies in forms and names. In fact, the eternal truth has many names, but is one.
Hallelujah.
That's probably a pretty good place.
Glory,
to start.
glory. Somebody say glory. Glory,
Glory.
glory, glory.
Hallelujah.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on.